And our friend Ryan Girdusky joins us. He's got the podcast, It's a Numbers Game, in the Clay and Buck Network. Also writes a fantastic Substack, which you should subscribe to. Speaking of his Substack, here's the latest. Trump's gold visa is bad policy. I saw this in my inbox this morning, and I talked to Ryan. I said, Ryan, there's somebody that I know quite well who thinks it is not bad policy, who is very excited about this, and I want to just let you two step into the Thunderdome over it, and I get to just eat the popcorn and watch. Clay says that you should just exactly what you think about this policy. You will not hurt his feelings. Clay is not a thin-skinned individual when it comes to the gold card policy. So take me through your argument here, because to be fair, yesterday I said, I don't love it. I don't hate it. I see some problems with it. Clay thinks amazing. You think not a good idea. Why?
So the policy that Trump sits there and says, first of all, one, there's legality problems, right? The president does not have the power to create a new green card process all on his own. So how does he sit there and offer a green card process? It would be through some kind of wrangling that Biden had with illegal immigrants to basically offer them a pathway into the country legally, illegally, but have a $5 million hold. It doesn't really make sense, and it's not something a lot of wealthy individuals would do because there's a lot of legality problems. That's first of all. Secondly, he says it's to replace the EB-5 visa. The president does not have the ability to end visas on his own. That's another problem with it. The EB-5 visa, which is what people are comparing this to, is a visa that if wealthy people can invest $800,000 to $1 million in this country and hire Americans in low-income areas, 10 Americans in low-income areas, they can get a EB-5 visa, a green card, and citizenship on like a 7-year process, a fast track to citizenship. But it's $800,000 to $1 million in low-income areas. They can't have visas, H-1B or H-2B visas. It has to be 10 American citizens over that time period. A lot of problems with the system, tons of fraud. It's a big, big thing. Like Chuck Schumer loves it because he was able to get a lot of projects done in Manhattan, which is not a low-income area, but they withdrew districts into Central Park. Anyway, lots of fraud, lots of problems, lots of issues. So in his statement, Trump and the Secretary of Commerce, Howard Lutnick, sit there and say the problem with the EB-5 visa is there's too many regulations on it. We want an easy $5 million. You get in the country, 1, 2, 3. With the promise that they'll bring jobs. Well, if there's no strings attached, well, then there's no promise that they're going to bring jobs. They're only going to hire Americans. They could just create an LLC in Delaware, so they made a business. It doesn't really matter. Okay, let's say he doesn't. He's promising Lutnick says 250,000 people, which is a $1.25 trillion payout to the American government. Trump says it could be 10 million, it could be 50 trillion. First of all, there are not 10 million people in the world that have $5 million of easy capital. So the only way that they get 10 million people is if you have foreign governments sponsoring people, which is problematic from a national security standpoint.
Let me pause you here for a sec, because I did I like this policy, but I'm not going to get into the back and forth right now, because I do think one of the questions that I had that was most significant is what a lot of people would call a total addressable market. That is, Buck and I were debating, Ryan, how many people actually have $5 million liquid, right? That is, you could stroke a check for $5 million. You're saying there's only 10 million. Like, where does that number come from?
So according to the Helene Partners, right, this is a report from 2024 of the wealthiest people in the world, 16 million people have $5 million, at least 30. Because if you have $5 million, a lot of it's tied up into your property, into your So
that's why, to cut you off, that's why we said yesterday, and a lot of people kind of push back, that there's a difference between having a house that's valuable and being a millionaire and being able to write a check with $1 million liquid. What I asked, and I think this is important, sorry to cut you off, is $5 million. This basically means if you wanted to buy a painting, right? You're at a fabulous event. You could just stroke a check, $5 million, and that cash would be out in a week or whatever it is, right? How many people can actually do that in some respect, the total addressable market.
Right. The Carnegie Research Institute put out a study that said only 2.6 million people worldwide have that kind of money, and a third of them already live in the United States. So you're talking about maybe 1.8 million people globally have that kind of money.
That seems low to me, but if that is accurate, then it would suggest the high end of this policy, best case scenario, is not actually very high.
It's not very, very high to begin with. And let's say they were to get 1 million people and get $5 trillion into the government's hands. $5 trillion is what we spend on the deficit every 2 years. The Congress could piss away this money shorter than you could have Irish twins. That's how quickly we're spending money.
I get it, Ryan, but wouldn't it be a good thing if it were possible to say, for every single dollar we bring in the event that there is a market for this, everything goes to paying down the debt. It doesn't go anywhere else. In other words, I get your argument. $5 trillion on a $36 trillion national debt is not a massive difference, but it's better than nothing, right? And right now, my argument.
Yeah, I agree with you. But the problem is I'm not talking the debt. I'm just talking the deficit. I'm talking what we will accumulate. If we put it to the debt, that will be back in 2027. Yeah, I would agree with you. If we were deficit neutral, I would 100% agree with you. That's a great way of paying down the debt. We're not deficit neutral. We run a $2 trillion debt. That's $2 trillion deficit every year.
Yeah.
So that deficit is going to replace this entire thing for 1 million people plus their family members, which is a larger population that decided the last 3 presidential elections. So they will have a right to vote within 5 years. This is what Trump's saying. Fast track to citizenship, right to vote anywhere. He's saying China can apply for it. Russian oligarchs can apply for it. Anyone, the Bin Laden family could apply for it. Anyone can apply with it. So they have $5 million in cash. They could apply for this gold card visa, get citizenship in a 5-year period, and be voting before J.D. Vance is running in 2028. That is what Trump is offering these people. This is, and for, by the way, something that will not last toward the end of his entire first term.
Wait, can I ask a question, Ryan, about that? Do we understand what the legality of this would be in terms of, a lot of stuff, Clay, and I think I've seen this with some of the big executive orders and everything so far. It's going to go to the courts, right? We knew the anchor baby thing going to the courts. We know some of this is going to the courts. How would the president be able to do this without congressional action, or would he need congressional action? It seems to me he would.
Yeah, so the EB-5 visa, we give out $10,000 a year. That's it. So he's basically saying we're going to increase the we're going to replace the EB-5 visa, increase all the numbers, and increase the caps beyond the congressional limit. He doesn't have that authority at all. So that would be immediately in the courts. What he would do is do a parole authority, which is what Biden was doing and Obama was doing to allow all these illegal aliens in. Parole was a presidential power for people who were like their parents were dying in the United States and they wanted to fly out, but they didn't have the correct visa. A president would parole a single person, and then under Obama started paroling millions of people, and Biden even exacerbated the issue. Trump's been very against parole authority during his first term and during his second. That's really his only loophole, but there's not a legality into getting a green card from that. So you're asking very wealthy, high-income people who could probably get a citizenship the long way very, very easily by saying we're going to short-term it by this parole program that I don't really have legal authority to, so you're going to be in the gray zone for quite a bit of time while we settle this in court. I don't think a lot of wealthy individuals, unless they're sponsored by governments, which he did not sit there and say if he's against or for, he was saying anyone could qualify, Russian oligarchs, the Chinese, everybody. And by the EB-5 visa, you cannot be sponsored by a foreign country. You have to have the cash yourself. That doesn't make any sense. Like there is no way to sit there and get these kinds of people in if they're be okay being in a gray legal authority for a year or possibly his entire 4-year term.
What do you like about what Trump is doing so far on immigration policy, Ryan? Let's take this to a happy place for a minute.
No, listen, I agree. Listen, the mass deportations, I like them. I hope they go out faster. I think, listen, if Trump gets the birthright citizenship case in his favor and he ends birthright citizenship for illegal immigrants, I don't care if he sleeps for the next 4 years. I don't care what he does. He will be one of the greatest presidents and most consequential, not only of my lifetime, of the last century. This is one of the worst things that's going on in our country and has been for a long time. It's amazing that he's taking this huge gamble on this as part of his early in his agenda. That is great. But the problem with Trump with this EB-5 thing, like with the Gaza Strip thing, is in his head, he's always kind of making a resort. So, yeah, you're going to make a resort in Gaza. You're going to sit there and make America into a resort, and you just have to pay, $5 million to sit by the pool and get a martini served to you. That is the fundamental issue. So you can have Howard Lutnick, who's a former Cantor Fitzgerald CEO, billionaire donor brain, who sees America as a transactional proposition. You have an issue. I believe America is for people who invested in this country, not for $5 million, but for generations, and built this country. And there's no
Okay, so let me ask you that. We agree with a lot of this stuff. Let me ask you this. What policies have you heard from a Republican or Democrat that are logical and make sense that would make sense to get rid of some part of our $36 trillion debt? Because here's my concern, Ryan. I think of everything out there right now. To the extent that I am concerned about things for the next 100 years, long after everybody listening now is gone, I think our national debt is the biggest threat that America faces, because the more and more it grows, the less we can allow the country to flourish, and the more foreign nations can have entanglements because they own a substantial portion of our debt. So what have you seen? I'm just curious. The reason I like this policy is Trump's got a conversation going about trying to address it in a new way. What have you heard or seen and you think, hey, this does make sense? Because I do bet you agree the national debt is a huge mess.
It's huge, huge problem. And listen, Doge and coins and gold visas are not going to solve the problem of Congress not doing the work. You have to have Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security reform. You have to have reform of the Department of Defense. You have to stop policing the world. That is first and foremost. I think we should still be suing government of China for COVID. I think we should absolutely be suing for what they did to our nation during COVID and the rake up the debt that we did then. And I've heard things about minting a $1 trillion chip and sitting there and using that to pay off the debt. I've heard of a lot of different things, but Congress has to stop spending like drunken sailors. Nothing that Elon Musk or a gold visa or anybody else will do as long as Congress sits there and spends us into oblivion. We have to stop letting Congress just endlessly sit there and just spend money, bad money, good money chasing bad projects. Has to stop.
Ryan Girdusky, everybody. Clay, anything else? We good? All right.
No, I mean, he's totally wrong on this. Congratulations on the baby. By the way, do you have any tips for Buck on fatherhood, as Buck will soon be a father in the next 6-8 weeks?
Yeah.
Everything that you think, a lot of your selfish needs all go out the window, and you will lose. The whole joke of you'll lose sleep is not a joke. You will just go days without sleeping like you think you will. So, but good luck. I mean, it's great. It is great, but there is no sleep. I mean, there's just no sleep for the first.
A lot of sunshine and rainbows for Mr. Girdusky today on the radio show.
I'm in one of those no sleep modes for several days. But yeah,
go check out the It's a Numbers Game podcast on the Clay and Buck Network, and subscribe to Ryan's Substack, the National Populist Newsletter. Mr. Girdusky, go get some sleep. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
All right, look, maybe the single best donation that you can make is to save the life of an unborn child who cannot speak up for himself or herself. Preborn is the nonprofit organization that is dedicated to this day in and day out, saving the lives of tiny babies in the womb. They've been doing this for 20 years, and they can proudly say they've saved 300,000 plus lives to date. The team working at Preborn use your donations in welcoming women who are pregnant and making that decision about whether to give life for their baby or to choose abortion. By introducing these women via ultrasound to the life growing inside them, these moms-to-be are twice as likely to choose life and become moms. And this all starts with that gift of the free ultrasound. Because once mom hears the heartbeat, everything changes. It only happens, though, because of your donations. Today, would you please be the voice for Preborn and become a monthly donor? $28 a month. Just $28 a month could be the difference between life and death for so many tiny babies. To donate securely, just dial pound 250 and say the keyword baby. That's pound 250, say baby, or go to preborn.com/buck, preborn.com/BUCK.